Tēnā tātou, tēnā koutou rā e wakarongo mai nei ki tēnei o ngā hōtaka o Koniahi Kòrero. O tira ki koutou e mātakitaki mai nei ki tēnei pā o mataora ki runga i a pukamata. Koinei ngā mei mata kuikui ki koutou katoa i tēnei o ngā rā. I tēnei rā, kei te kite koutou, kōwai kei taku taa, nā ko te kazi, Chris, engari ka waiho ki aia, ki te whakamoho atu ki koutou katoa kōwai ia aua āhuatanga katoa. Engari, Chris, kei te mihi hoki ki tō whānau, kei te tihi o whakaaro tō tuakana i ngā wā katoa, nā reira e mihi ana ki aia hoki mō ana mai wakapaukaa mō te iwi, mō te maunga hoki. Nā reira e mihi ana, o tira ki tō māma hoki, ko ia tētahi o tōku oku tino aunties, tōna ngākau hu Māori e me ki, ki te whānau katoa. Nā reira e te whanaunga, ka tuku te rākau ki koe i tēnei wā, kei a koe te wā.
Tēnā koe whanaunga, tēnā tātou. Ko Chris Robinson tōku ingoa, hiuri o Taranaki, ko rātou iwi, ko ngā rua ine, ko ngā te ruanui, rātou ko ngā rauru Taranaki tūturu. Ki te taha ki tōku māma, kia ngā rua ine, me ngā hapu a kāne i umutai, ki te taa ki tōku pāpā, kia ngā titu me araukuku o ka apu, ko Irene rāua, ko Roy Robinson o ku mātua, ko o Mauri Robinson tōku tuakana. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, kia ora mai, tātou katoa.
Tēnā koe, Kazi. Hey, thank you for finding the time to sit with me this afternoon. I know you've been busy, rugby and all of that stuff for everything that you're obviously up to. But thank you, e mihi ana ki koe, kua whai wā koe ki te noho tai i ki au, o tira ki tātou katoa. So thanks for that, Kaz, to slip us in the holidays as it is right now. And, so talking about the holidays, you've had rugby and you've had to find the time for us to sit together. And so tell us a bit about that. What do you do?
Yeah, so, well, in a nutshell, I coach now. So we've just finished a campaign for the Taranaki under-16s boys team. And when I say campaign, we only ended up having 2 games due to COVID. And so, it takes time, but it's a real passion to be involved in futupōro. And when I look at that link in terms of Māoridom, and you see it in our wharenui all the time, you see pictures or pikitia kei runga i te pakitara of our futupōro teams. You see it at Waiokura in our wharenui there. And I guess for me, it's just about giving back. So, last week we finished our campaign actually up in Waikato, and the day after they went into lockdown. So, So my wife and I, who's the manager, we both had COVID tests the next day, and obviously came back negative. But sort of brought it closer to home. I guess on that rugby front too, we part of a team. So I do a lot of my coaching at the kura also with a friend of mine, Chris Campbell. We actually went to school together. Talk about that a bit more. He was the head boy and I was naughty, but he's the head coach. So I would say I'm his assistant, and Ange, my wife is our manager. She does an awesome job. Actually, without her,
is the boss.
Do it. Yeah, she is actually. To be fair, we might do a lot of the work on the training paddock, but she does all the background stuff. Without that type of mahi, it just doesn't happen. So real privilege to coach the Taranaki teams, and not sure if I'll go next year. It's just a big commitment. But Yeah, real privilege and honour to have that opportunity to coach at that level.
Yeah, and it does take quite a bit of commitment, eh? And so with the thought, or well, with the fact that you guys only got to play 2 games at the end because of COVID, was the commitment there from the young men who you were coaching?
Yeah, they realise it's a privilege too to be selected, so they have to go through a process. I mean, we started the process back in June, probably a little bit earlier than that, in terms of the planning phase, and then when it came to shortlisting and selecting, and so the boys get a real they're really clear on expectations, and we also get the union resources involved, like the RDOs, and a lot of their strength and conditioning trainers come in, and dietitians. So the boys are really privileged to be exposed to that level pretty early. And I must say, there's a couple of things there. One is it's the union's first step up the ladder. So under 16s is the first rep team they have, and then you'll go up through there. But it used to be a few years ago they would have so they still have Ross Brown at a junior level, but they'd have Roland Mills under 13s, under 14s, and there's been a real move away from that. I guess not so much of a focus on young kids, really, because they're just kids, so they're under 13 grade, focusing on rep rugby, but getting them to play a number of different sports. So like touch and rugby league, and our girls nete poro, and so having rugby as an option there, but also they found that it's actually detrimental to kids. So that's really important to really understand why the under 16s therefore is the first step.
Okay, that's a good point. Because, you know, what we're seeing now, you know, when we were young, everyone played something. You had to play a sport. There was no two ways about it. And not only that, you played a sport and you would have been playing reps from like a really young age. Like we were playing hockey reps. Like, man, I have to say I was like 10 or 11 going away on trips and stuff like that. I mean, we were only in the B team in the younger age. Once we got into the Form 1s, Form 2s, then, you know, you step it up a bit. So a bit different. That's not a contact sport. But why do you think, and all the kids now, they play lots of things, you know, like we played a thing and we got good at that thing and we stayed with that, and then you might pick up touch or something in the summer just to keep fit. But now everyone's into everything, eh? Like you've got swimming on the weeknights, you've got soccer, you can play soccer on a Saturday, you can play league on a Sunday, you can play rugby on a Saturday, hockey's in the weeknights. Like what are you guys seeing there? Like how is I suppose when I talk about commitment in that sense, are the kids coming through into high school with like a real sense of what they're good at, or are they getting there a bit later?
It really varies, you know, like there are some boys already at that age, and even girls that are just set or already know that rugby is their main game. But even though rugby might be where they see themselves in terms of future aspirations, they still often play touch or other sports. I think just from what I'm seeing and even at school with our first 15 at Kura, it's the whole landscape's changed from when we were at Kura back in the 90s. It's just I guess that professionalism is there, and they get scouted so young too. So I'm sure parents and kids are aware of that, you know. So you have these 1A schools, like I probably shouldn't name them, so I won't, but they're sending out scouts to league tournaments, to rugby tournaments. They're watching all of the first 15 rugby on TV. So these kids know that they're being watched, and then they're being put into sports management programs. And so I think it's just a different age, and so some kids are getting a lot of what's the right word? Getting a lot of attention at a really young age. And for example, when I was at intermediate, we had 2 boys picked up from a sevens tournament, and they were 13. But now both of them, fortunately, have been in pro systems for a while. So yeah, I think just different time. I think kids I think the main thing is kids are really aware of the opportunities, and they're being approached at such a young age, and it's just so different. Yeah.
Like, it's hard for me to get my head around that. Kids being approached at such a young age with the thought of a possible professional future in it for them. But like you say, that's the age. That's where we're at right now. Now, I had another question for you too in regards to the sport. Oh, yeah, so they're getting picked. It's about the under 16s where you start getting the rest of that service coming in. You've got the nutritionalists and all of that. Because, man, when we were playing under 18 hockey, we didn't have no services coming in. We were like, you guys better be able to run for 75 minutes or 70 minutes, and that's all you need to be able to do, and we weren't even good trainers or anything. That's not true. Some of them were really good trainers. The rest of us were like winging it every game, hoping that our 5Ks a week that we were running was going to get us through. So in terms of that with the trainers, pardon?
It probably would, 5Ks. Depends what sport, eh?
Yeah, well, obviously it helped because, I haven't kept it up, clearly. But so do you see that? Like, what's the training schedule like for these kids if they're thinking they're going to go on to a professional career because they're getting it from, it's the talk is there from a young age, obviously.
Yeah, I can only really talk about the boys' side, and I guess the boys that we've had. So this will be my 3rd year. My wife and I have been involved with the in this program for Taranaki, and I guess the main thing is most of our boys are already in or thereabouts with their first 15s, and primarily most of our boys tend to come from the 2 big schools here, the 2 1A schools, which is obviously New Plymouth Boys High, Te Kura Tamatani o Ngāmotu, and Francis Douglas, both in New Plymouth. But they both play in pretty good competition, so they get really good coaching. So there's some excellent coaches in both schools, and there's a lot of rugby knowledge. So the kids before it's not like they turn up to a skills day or a trial without us actually knowing who they are. Anyone can watch them on Sky Sport. Not all of the boys at this age group, which is sometimes like year 10, year 11, even some year 12s, in their schools, first 15s. But there are a number of them who we can just go online and watch footage from Sky Sport and just see how they're going. And unfortunately, I don't know if that's probably the wrong word. A lot of them, a lot of the ones we don't see or hear of are the ones who don't necessarily, they have the talent. It's just we maybe don't know about them because they're not in those systems. So those are the odd ones that will turn up, which is why we run skills days, which is why we have a trial in the first place, is to see these young men from Te Kura, or Ngā Turua Nui, Ngārua Ine, Te Pipiinga, these boys from Whaitara, from these other kura, from coastal area school, Pātea, who aren't being exposed and are being ID'd early. We can get an opportunity to see them, and you see it every year I've been involved. You see there's always one kid who you go, well, where'd you come from? But it's just, I think rugby overall is pretty good at identifying talent, but there's always one every year who you think, who was this kid? Where did he come from? And I think that's pretty cool, actually. And importantly, unions like ours and the rest of the rugby unions need to keep need to make sure that we're giving those kids the opportunities to play at that level with these other boys, because it only takes one scout to see them in a Chiefs tournament. They make a Chiefs team, and it's not an easy path. But if they can make Taranaki and then play in the Chiefs tournament, which is where we go and we play the other Chiefs franchises, then the Chiefs scouts are there. That's all they need, just one opportunity, really. And that's the brilliant thing about sports. It gives opportunities to lots of our kids.
Yeah, definitely. So I interviewed, I don't know if you know Vicky Dombrowski. I interviewed Vicky Dombrowski the other day, and she was a Black Fern. She was a Black Fern, and she was the coach of the Black Ferns, like way some time back. And then she and I spoke about the interview that I had watched Gail Broughton give with our locker room team. And Gail really pointed out that the team dynamic was such that they were growing the person, not the player. That was like the sort of motto of their team, I suppose. And Vicky, when I spoke to her about that, she made comment of that was something that they started when she came on board, was actually to look at the person and not so much the player. At 16 years old, is that what you're trying to do with these young fellas who you're coaching, or is it a different approach?
Yeah, I think there's huge elements of that. When you're looking at this, I mean, sports as a career path, it's often the first ones that come to light are the ones that have talent, or the biggest or the fastest or the strongest at junior grades. But it doesn't mean that you're going to make it as a pro. Like you can read so many stories about the professionals, and it's always those who take the talent and then add that work ethic with it. So I don't know if I've answered your question, Koniahi, really, but I think that, even the girls that we've got at school, so talented, and they're not traditionally futuportal players. They grow up playing netball primarily, touch too, which is awesome for skill sets. And then they get to rugby, and some of them are so natural. You think they've been playing their entire lives when it comes to catch pass skills. And then, I mean, I think the thing is, I don't think it's really a challenge for us. I just like to give the girls an opportunity, especially at our kura, and Chris Campbell will be the same, by having our programs. And I've got to say too, Letitia Berry's been awesome with our girls at kura. She's done a massive job with them. She's involved in the Taranaki 16s girls too, and it's not just about winning, but just exposing our girls to another sport, other opportunities, and I guess overall it's just a real privilege to be involved in with young people, and when you see it as a privilege, then it all comes as a real bonus.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't think we'd get stuck on the sport for so long, but I love talking about sports. So here we are. Here we are, e te whānau. So the young, watching the young girls and the young women coming through and on the rugby scene is pretty exciting, because we started, we resurrected the Eltham Junior Rugby Club quite some time ago. And one of our girls in particular, she's carried on and she's come through, and she's like nearly 14 now, and had quite a bit of experience. Oh, well, not experience, but exposure. from this time. Now, when I think back to when I was her age, that was just not happening. For yeah, I actually remember my dad and one of my sisters having an argument and him saying, "You're not playing rugby. It's not for girls." You know, and just the change in the way we see it now is, I think it's exciting, and it's exciting to watch, man. You know, you watch those, you watch them play at those higher levels, and it's like pretty dynamic. You reckon?
Yeah, I agree. You see someone like Gail. I mean, we talked about her before, but I mean, she's outstanding. And then you see our local club team here, our women's team. They call themselves the Shakiwas, Southern Sharks, but they're awesome role models for our girls too. And also just a big shout out to Southern and the Southern women's team, Lynn and the other girls, for actually they coached, supported, and drove our girls everywhere. Just massive effort from them. And I mean, the results wise, who really cares, to be fair?
Yeah.
The girls enjoyed it, and the numbers grew, and we started small. We didn't even really have a team. We ended up playing New Plymouth Girls High School first, and they had enough for 3 teams, it seemed. Their first team ran out, and then they had more girls running out, and I think we had 9.
Yeah.
So we could have had 15. I think we made it 10s. One of the girls turned up, which was good. The girls are just, I mean, I've coached boys my entire life, and boys have been normally playing, so 4 years old, they might start in league. By the time they get to us at high school, they've been playing for 10 years. They know the game, you know. They don't know everything, but they know their basics are pretty good, like tackling. But with girls, it's you got to get the basics right. You got to make it safe, and especially girls coming from a different sport into rugby. One of the biggest things is teaching them how to tackle safely, because in the collision areas is where most of the concussions happen. So it's just about being safe and getting the girls to tackle safely, and then build from there, build their confidence, because it is a confidence thing too. Your mind tells you not to run into pain or to not stand in the way of the other girl running at you. Your mind, you gotta program yourself to work past that. Yeah, but our girls have been awesome. Yeah,
that's exciting. So I'm just thinking now, because here you are in rugby. Obviously, you must have played a bit of rugby in your time too. So was that indicative of your upbringing?
Yeah, I think we're really fortunate with Papa in that he was just really staunch for Te Pōro, and I always used to wonder why. Like there weren't really, to be honest, you know, now if you were to look at rugby, and I think Sonny Bills talked a little bit about that in his new book, how it is quite,
well, I was going to get to that with you.
Yeah, how it is quite predominantly I guess Pākehā. But in saying that, when you look at clubs like any club really, it's the only place I've ever found where you can have on any team, you could have a bank manager, an accountant, a lawyer, a meat worker, a builder, someone who works on the oil rig, someone who works at Fonterra, someone who drives a truck, all in the same team. And there's no I'm better than you. It's just we're all the same. And you find that really early in rugby. I've never found that in any other sport, to be fair. Not that I've played a lot of other sports, but it's just quite unique, you know, and it's still like that today. Wherever you go, rugby is the unifying factor. In terms of Papa, I think there was always that element to expose us to the to that side and the different, different worlds within a town. A place like Hawera has so many different people in so many different places. So many of those avenues. I guess Dad really understood that by playing rugby, we'd be exposed to lots of different people and different kids from different backgrounds, and I think that was one of the reasons he got us into rugby. And I think, other than that, secondly, it's our whakapapa. I think if you look at rugby for our people, it was one of the first activities that unified Māori and Pākehā together. So in a common whānau, if you will, working towards common goals. And obviously for Māori, it sort of gravitates to our natural instincts to want to get some physical contest, I guess. Yeah, and see your cousins. And so there's always that element, and so for us, I mean, Papa was probably the one who got us, who really gave us that connection to rugby. He was a passionate man. He used to wake us up at 2:00 in the morning. It became a tradition to watch the All Blacks. He used to wake us all up. But being that we were kids, after Rosary, would have kai and then go to bed. The only special time that we got to sort of be like adults and be like men was to get up early and have a meal or a cup of tea and watch the All Blacks with our papa. So I know that's where it started for my brothers and I, and so that's where the passion for Futuporos come from.
That's a really beautiful memory, actually, that I know most kids would share, because man, I don't really know any families who weren't doing that back in the day, or probably even now. If there's an early morning game, a late night game, or whatever, most people are getting up for it still. So outside of that rugby sphere, because obviously there's more to life at some point in time, what else was influential on your upbringing that sort of informs where you are now?
Oh yeah, really clearly, what stands out is for us is our Katorika upbringing. Dad, devout Catholic, and Mum also. Mum still will perform the Rosary every night, and if you don't know what the Rosary is, you've been blessed. But the Katorika upbringing is definitely a grounding factor for myself and my siblings, and we're still heavily involved in our local. I guess it's Hoani Pāpita is a marae, but it's also a church, and so still heavily involved there. And I guess just through that is obviously connection through Papa and Mama to our marae, where we'd often go, and a few stories about that too.
Yeah, that's right. There's always a few stories about those places. So, so there is the strong faith that you guys hold, and influential at the pā too. Very kanohi kita. It's very rare to not see your mum around, and one of the daughters right there beside her, if not all of them. So it's like it's actually really neat to see these whānau who carry on with those traditions and those traditional practices, and I think it's just so important too that we see that, and I do think it's important to have faith as well. If you don't have whakapono ki tētahi, it's really something that's missing for ngai Māori.
Right.
And I think I spoke about that bit briefly with Whai Kushla too a couple of months ago when I spoke with her. Because another whānau,
Yeah,
who's
the
really
Luke
strong in their faith. Yeah. So what do you do now aside from the rugby? What else are you into? Mahi, all of that stuff.
Yeah, mahi wise, I mean, a teacher now, so at Harwood High School. Previous to that, I was teaching at Harwood Intermediate for about 4.5 years. So that is my, I guess we don't call it a job, it's more a vocation. I know that's sort of like something that sort of maybe even bandied around a bit, but it does make you realize that we as teachers have so much effect, and we can have so much I wouldn't say influence, so much within our role. We can do so much with our young ones to inspire, to educate. And I mean, teaching's only a small part of the role, to be fair.
Yeah. And has it been a big change going from, the younger kids to the older kids? Do you teach throughout the years at high school, or what does that look like?
So yeah, big difference. The I guess at the end of the day, I should say teaching's teaching. Whether you're teaching primary school or secondary school, you've got to love what you're doing. And I must say, when you look at the year 7 and 8s at intermediate, they're so naive, which is pretty cool, eh? So they're just kids. So you can, at lunchtimes, you wouldn't find me often in the staff room, be walking around or shooting some hoops with the kids, or running around trying to play touch or hurting myself or something like that. But it's so awesome. It's like it's hard to explain unless you've been a teacher or someone who's worked in education before. But it's really, if I was to sum it up, it's about that whakawhanaungatanga. It's about the relationships, and when you flow on into secondary school, the kids are older. In my experience, and being a parent first, are less naive. But it's also, it's just hard to explain secondary school. Secondary school is a real privilege, because these kids are, they're not really kids. They're in that transition zone, like it's a really stressful time for, adolescent, and then they move into puberty, and then they get to secondary school. There's so much happening for them. It's one of the most stressful periods in life. And then we make them do all this work, and then NCA comes along. It's a really precious time for them. And I think we struggled. I think in New Zealand, with some of the models we have around education, we've really struggled to understand the effect that transitions have on kids. Meaning that, in my situation, if I talk about my experience, you have year 6 kids who come from a primary school, then they transition into intermediate as a year 7. Then as a year 7, they're really trying to find their feet. And then they get to year 8, they're settled, they understand how the school works, and then we're transitioning them to secondary school. Like, we just add extra stress to them, and I feel for the kids, and extra worries. It's difficult enough without having 2 massive transitions at such a young age, and then we get to secondary school, and it's another big transition which takes them time to adjust. So I think, with a lot of the year 9s and some of the behaviours you might see in your standard mainstream secondary school, it can be attributed to, in some part, at least in some small way, to the transitions that these kids have to go through.
Yeah. When you put it like that, it's quite... I listened to Nathan Makaere-Wallace. He actually came, we had a wānanga at the PA with him one year, and he talks about the four brains. And, you know, when a teenager is going through adolescence, especially a boy, and they do something, you know, like we had the example given was there was a glass of water and there was a fly right next to the glass, and this young fella just tipped the glass of water on top of the fly. And the mum's like, why did you do that? And the boy's like, I don't know. And she's like going off, but he truly right then didn't know. And that came down to the I think it was the his thinking brain, or whatever that brain is, and whatever the other brain was, shutting down for renovation and just leaving emotional and movement brain open for that moment. So emotional reaction was, there's a fly, there's a cup of water, oh, I can move because my movement brain is engaged. I'm going to tip the cup of water on the fly. So it really puts into perspective what's going on with teenagers at that point in time of their life. So I take my hat off to all of you who dive into that role of teaching teenagers, because it's a long-term job. But hey, but keeping in line with the education stuff, you know, right now the mandates come out that people who are teaching, you know, it's going to be, what's the word they're using? You have to be vaccinated, mandatory. But what's the word? It's compulsory, mandatory. That's it. It's going to be mandatory that teachers receive the vaccination. What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's essential, to be fair. And I know we had probably a little kōrero about it earlier, whanaunga. I gave the example that when I on Rātu, i tēnei wiki, when I was donating blood at the hub here in Hāwera, and sitting down next to a socially distanced, of course, but sitting down next to a couple of males who were talking about, one pro-vaccination, one anti-vaccination, was going to get it though, but was against the idea of mandatory vaccination, whatever the workforce. He wasn't both. Neither were teachers. I don't know what their backgrounds were, but they did debate the benefits, but at the end of the day, they got nowhere with it, with their kōrero, because they both still held really steadfast to their points of view when they started. And then of course I'm just listening to them, trying to, you know, just listen to their kōrero as you do. And then of course they just said, oh, well, what's your view on that? I just said, look, I agree with it. I'm a teacher. And I said, you know, it does make sense that we as teachers need to be vaccinated. I mean, my kōrero to them was just around whānau. So I said, my mama being waru te kaumā whā ona tau, she's it's my job to help keep her safe too. And then my younger brother, who had a kidney transplant in 2018, is on immunosuppressant drugs. So he has no immune system. If he gets COVID, it could end up being quite bad for both of them. And on top of that, my sister has respiratory problems. So she only has, I think, half of the lung capacity of your average adult. So we have in our papakainga, all three of our whare are connected. So we're at 47 and they're 45. My mum's at 43. So our bubble's quite big. So my concern was for them. And when I hear the kōrero around, but it's my choice, it's it always seems to me that it seems that the kōrero, and this is just my view, that always seems to come back to me. So it's quite a individualistic thing, and whereas it's I've got both my shots, I'm fully vaccinated. The thought process wasn't about me, it was about my whānau. So, you know, I just find it quite foreign how people will think, oh, it's my choice, and it seems to be about them, when I think really if we were to not think about ourselves first and put our whānau first, we would all go and get vaccinated, whether you believe in vaccination or not. That's not why you should do it. I think we could all understand that in my situation, that having 3 whānau in our papa kāinga who, if COVID did hit, they would be they would be in trouble. So we're just doing our part to protect our whānau. So that's my whakaaro on that, and that's why I think for us as teachers, it's even more important that we get vaccinated, because we're around other people's children. So we need to make sure that we're doing as much as we can, because in teaching, it's just about duty of care, in parentis locus. Our job is to look after the kids, and it's a real privilege to have that responsibility. So one way we can do that as teachers is to be vaccinated. So I think it just makes sense.
Yeah. Gee, thank you for your whakaaro on that. Because actually, Te Whānau, before we had a quick chat before we came on, we hadn't even talked about vaccinations coming into any of our kōrero, actually. We talked a little bit about the rugby and the upbringing and stuff like that, and it's gone a few places since then. But I just want to mihi to you, Chris, for giving us the time today. Also to your family who's at home with you, and obviously you all do everything together. You're coaching and managing rugby together, you and your wife, and kids will be involved, and you're living right next door to your whole whānau, and that's a papa kāinga lifestyle that many of us aspire to attain. Nā reira, e mihi ana ki koe. Do you have any parting words for everybody?
Oh, no, it's just, I think when you first asked me to come on and have our kōrero, cuz I did think, oh geez, I've been watching a few, and I've been seeing a few of the whanaunga, the Kazi Kush, and the whanaunga Warren, and a few of our other whanaunga pop on, and I think you had the whanaunga Will on a little while ago, and I thought, oh man, this is an awesome kōrero. And then when you messaged me about this, I thought, geez, what stories have I got to share? And I guess it's not about me. It's just about, I guess, sharing our stories together, as so we can, I guess, the more stories we have, the more we get to see our people in these situations. Then I don't know if I have that right, whanaunga, just trying to make sense of it myself. The more we see our people in these situations, the more normalised it becomes.
Yes, spot on. I think that's the key too. So anyone who's listening out there, when I ask you to, come and have a kōrero with me, here you go. Kazi Chris has just explained the reason, and you nailed it on the head. It is exactly about that, is for everyone, all of our uri around the maunga, to share something. Everybody has got something to share. It's just deciding what it is that you want to share. Nā reira, e mihi ana ki koe, anō nei ngā mei ki te whānau hoki. O tira ki koutou, e wakarongo mai nei, e mātakitaki mai nei I tēnei. O ngā pāpā o mata ora, no māua ko Chris te honore nui, kua hono mai koutou ki tēnei o ngā hōtaka Koniahi kōrero, kia haumaru ai te Noho ki roto I o koutou kāinga, kia mo'o au te Noho ki roto I o koutou ware, hei konei, hei kona e te iwi.